Whether you're the kind of person who can distinguish a Sancerre from a Sauvignon just by smell, or who chooses your beverage based solely on the label, you might have some opinions on wine. It has notes of wet dog with a nerdy bouquet. And when it comes to pairing your favorite wines with food, there are a lot of options out there. But how much of what all those snooty sommeliers say is backed up by science? Like, does it really matter if I want to eat my steak with a glass of white wine instead of red? It turns out that the research does back up the idea that matching up the right food and wine can have a big impact. So here's the right way to pair your dinner and your drink according to science. Let's start with the classic, wine and cheese. To understand why certain wines and cheeses are a perfect pair, we need to talk about acidity and astringence. Acidity is pretty self-explanatory, and astringence refers to a feel of dryness across your whole palate. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, we only talk about acidity with white wines and astringence for reds. Neither of these flavors are bad things, because plenty of people expect them in certain beverages and foods, but too much acid or astringence in wines is something that critics take notice of. And keeping those flavors in balance is where pairing your pour with the right cheese can help. For starters, having a little taste of cheese prior to your first sip of wine can reduce the perceived astringence of wine. But if that were the whole story, then you'd expect any cheese would get the job done, or that certain cheeses were always good at reducing astringence, and this just isn't the case. Instead, researchers suggest that the real magic is in how well the cheese and wine share the stage. A study from 2010 had a small team of wine experts rate wine and cheese pairings on how well they balanced each other on a scale of 1 to 12, where 6 meant the two struck the perfect balance. And only one combo managed to score an average of 6.01, almost a perfect match. That combo was Chardonnay and triple cream cheese. Think something along the lines of Brie. The experts consulted in the story credit the perfect score to the way the acidity of the Chardonnay could stand up to the creaminess of the cheese. And there might be something to that, because a separate study also found that of the cheeses they considered, Chardonnay paired best with a semi-soft, creamy cheese called Oka. Don't worry, red wine drinkers, there are plenty of excellent cheese pairs for your favorite bottle too. Both studies found that Pinot Noir paired well with semi-soft cheeses, and the second study also suggested some firmer cheeses like provolone or Swiss could also be good choices. The experts say that these cheeses are lighter on the palate, meaning that a wine with a little less body, like a Pinot Noir, is the ideal match and won't overpower those more delicate fatty notes. I guess you could say some pairs just have good chemistry. Moving on from the cheese board, we have another classic fancy hors d'oeuvre. Oysters and champagne, a tale as old as time. But why does this dynamic duo work so well together? The answer is bacon and eggs, and ham and cheese. Or rather, the reason those things go so well together is exactly the same as it is for oysters and champagne. These foods all share one major flavor feature: umami. Umami is the savory part of food, which we taste when certain compounds bind with umami receptors on our tongue. And it turns out that champagne and oysters are a killer combo because they have a 1-2 umami punch. See, one of those umami chemicals is called glutamate, and if you've got glutamate alongside free nucleotides, they can amplify those umami signals. Scientists analyzed champagne and oysters for the presence of both glutamate and free nucleotides, and almost all of the champagnes they tested had glutamate, but at such low levels that most people probably couldn't taste it. As for the oysters, they had glutamate and free nucleotides. Not all oysters were created equal in terms of how much they had, but they still brought the necessary nucleotides. Researchers believe that glutamate and nucleotides can hang out in your mouth after you eat a raw oyster, so that when you follow the slurp of an oyster with the sip of champagne, you get a boost to help that umami flavor linger. And hey, if you don't believe us, feel free to indulge in this extravagant combo and see for yourself. It is for science, after all. While we're in the seafood department, let's talk about a pairing that's supposed to be a major no-no. As James Bond taught us in the 1960s classic From Russia with Love, red wine cannot go with fish. And while Bond never really told us why red wine doesn't go with fish, he didn't really have to, because anyone who's tried a Malbec with a baked haddock will know that the red wine leaves a fishy aftertaste behind. And a study in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry seems to have a suggestion for why that is. They presented a panel of 7 tasters with dried scallops, paired with a total of 69 different wines, from reds to whites and even some oddball wines you've probably never heard of, like botrytized wine. It's a wine that's made from grapes infected with a fungus. The tasters then rated the level of fishy aftertaste each pairing produced. After identifying the wines with the strongest and weakest fishy aftertastes, the scientists then did a chemical analysis of the wine to see if their very fishy wines had something in common. And it turns out the fishy taste was strongly linked to the concentration of iron in the wine. To confirm that iron was the culprit, they added different amounts of iron to wine and tasted it again. And the taste test showed that increasing amounts of iron translated to increased fishy aftertaste. Is that where the band Iron and Wine got its name from? To cover all their bases, the researchers also added an iron chelating substance, which basically just bonds to the iron so that it can't be tasted. And when they did that, it suppressed the fishy aftertaste. And it turns out changes in the wine industry might account for part of the reason James Bond's advice is outdated. Red wines aged in stainless steel contain less iron than those aged in wooden barrels, and stainless steel is all the rage for reds nowadays. However, unless you know for sure how the bottle of Cabernet was aged, you might not be able to tell how well it pairs with fish until it's too late. But before we move on to our next wine pairing, all research requires funding, so let's talk about ours.
Thank you for supporting this SciShow video by watching, telling people about it, and being the #1 fan base for SciShow's favorite band, Ekleipsis. The band is so good, the only word you can use to describe them is unreal. After their Path of Totality tour last April, Ekleipsis returns this year to celebrate the upcoming total lunar eclipse on March 14th. Some people might say this is the sophomore slump of eclipses. They might say the lunar eclipse isn't as cool as the solar eclipse, but Ekleipsis is here to tell you otherwise. And look at them. Are you going to tell them what is and isn't cool? I didn't think so. In fact, they're sponsoring this video to help you out and make your wardrobe a little cooler. From now through April 18th, you can get their new band tee at Complexly.store/bloodmoon. Check the description of this video for a link and for their track list inspiration.
So we know why pairing a red wine with fish can be dicey, but it's common knowledge that it pairs really well with red meat, right? Well, we looked into it, and this match has surprisingly little science to back it up. That said, researchers do have some ideas on why this is such a classic pairing. Like oysters, red meat is traditionally full of those savory and umami flavors. Researchers suspect that the savoriness of the meat could tease out the slight savory flavor notes of red wine, similar to how combining oysters and sparkling wine amplify the umami vibes. Mouthfeel might also have something to do with it, where the complex texture of the meat enhances the enjoyment of the wine. But that doesn't really call out red wine specifically, so we still need more research on this duo. And whenever this study gets going, I would be happy to be a test subject. But while there's not much data about red wine and red meat, we did find a few papers talking about how red meat is a perfect match for sake, a Japanese rice wine. Sake has high levels of glutamate for umami, plus it has a lot of free-floating amino acids to amplify it too. That study also looked at the umami potential of our grape-based wines, but they only looked at one red wine sample, and it had a lot less glutamate than the sake or even the white wines, so that may be why their particular red wine wasn't a hit. So it might be time to try pairing some sake with your next beef dinner. The next combo might not have as much to do with hard data as it does cultural preference. See, this is all about how to pair a beverage with spicy foods, and the end goal all depends on how hot you like your meals. A lot of times, sommeliers might recommend a sweeter, lighter wine to pair with spicy foods. And logically, that kinda makes sense. All that sweetness is supposed to counterbalance the heat of your spicy dish and save your palate from getting scorched. But one survey conducted in South Korea found that most respondents had the opposite opinion. Some respondents said they preferred to pair a spicy food with a very astringent wine because it emphasized the mouth-burning feel of the spicy food. food. Tannic red wines were more enjoyable as a pairing for spicy food than the sweeter wine options because they didn't wash away the edge of the spicy food. Now, this finding may or may not be duplicated if the survey was conducted in, say, the US, but it does highlight how wine pairings can be influenced by cultural preferences, not just flavor alone. Now that we've covered the appetizers and main courses, it's time for dessert. And there's no better match out there than chocolate and sparkling wine. So if you don't have your next Valentine's Day gift planned, here's how to pick the perfect wine and chocolate pair. A study published in 2023 looked at several types of chocolate, including white, milk, and dark, as well as 14 different kinds of sparkling wine. 50 tasters evaluated the chocolates and wines individually and then in combination. And to prevent taste fatigue, they stretched these taste tests out over 3 days. They looked at a ton of variables that most people probably aren't thinking about when enjoying their chocolate or their wine. Things like frailty, stickiness, floral notes, and the taste of things like toast and elderflower. The researchers also performed chemical analyses on the wines, checking how much sugar and alcohol they had. Taking all that into consideration, the researchers identified the best complementary and harmonious pairings. Now, before you use their results as your wine shopping list, I will add that this study was done in Romania with Romanian sparkling wines, so you may not be able to find all of these in your local stores. But they did see that different chocolates pair better with different wines. For example, dark chocolates are noted for being bitter and astringent. When pairing with a wine, the best fit was a sweet and fruity rosé, which helped balance the bitter taste of high cocoa content in the chocolate. And white wine had its moment too. White chocolate paired best with sparkling semi-dry Chardonnay because its honey and fruit flavors combined well with the chocolate's creamy sweetness. From the appetizer course all the way to dessert, there really are some science-backed ways to pair food and wine. Even if you aren't a wine drinker, I hope this gives you some insights to how to use this research at your next dinner party. So join me in a toast to science.